Hello, everybody. We're going to work on our fitness program today. Last week, you were supposed to do your fitness assessment and determine your target heart rate zone. So after reviewing and correcting everybody's assignments, I see that we may not have gotten that correct. So I want to go back and make sure that we're on the same page. First step is that in order to determine a cardiovascular fitness program or any fitness program, we need to have a starting point. So in order to determine a starting point, we always do a fitness assessment. This past week's assessment was to do your cardiorespiratory endurance test with either a 3-minute step test. Here's where you had a measured bench. It had to be 18 inches tall. You needed to use the metronome, which was approximately set at 88 beats per minute or a cadence. And you had to step up, up, down, down, up, down, down. Immediately upon completion, you took your radial, your pulse, heart rate for 30 seconds. You multiplied that by 2. You put it through the mathematical equation and you determined your current fitness level. Then the next thing that you did was you could also have done the 1-mile walk or the 1.5-mile run walk test. Now, you needed to do those on a measured track. It needed to be flat, and you can't do them on a treadmill. Based off of the weather that we've been having recently, it's difficult in 19 or that 28 mile per hour gale force winds to be able to get outside and do those things. So I'm guessing that most people chose the 3-minute step test. Also, if you were selecting the 1.5-mile run walk test, you needed to have been a regular exerciser, exercising at least 3 times per week aerobically for at least 3 months. So you needed to do a fitness assessment to determine what your predicted max VO2 was. Once we have your predicted max VO2, it could be average, above average, below average, whatever your results were, that's going to help us to determine where your cardiorespiratory fitness program is supposed to start. So the other thing that you needed to do was to determine your max heart rate and your target heart rate zone. So I put together a very interesting video that had a lot of pieces of information that you could go back and forth and check it out and make sure that you knew the FIT principles and how to apply them to our world. And so from that standpoint, I'm hoping that you did that and you understood the FIT principles. Many of you did not design an actual fitness program, and instead you sort of talked about the FIT principles. And so I'm trying to make sure that we all are on the same page. So let's take a look at how we literally design our own aerobic or cardiovascular fitness program, and let's get started from there. Okay, so the next step is to determine what my target heart rate zone is, or training heart rate zone, the THRZ. And so you will see that I'm using the Karvonen method. It's the most efficient method. However, it needs some extra things or extra steps. So the first step that you need to do with the Karvonen method is you need to have your resting heart rate recorded for at least 2 days. You can do 3 days, but we did 2 days. I asked for 2 days, and I asked if you would record those down, and then you take the average of those. So let's just say that my resting heart rate was 67 beats one day and 65 beats the next day. So we now know that my average heart rate for that then would be 66, right? So my average heart rate is 66. From here, using the Karvonen method, I take 220 and I minus my age. So let's pretend that my age is 34. Okay, so if my age is 34, then this leaves me with a 186. My 186 is my maximum heart rate. This is MXR. My maximum heart rate is that number that I don't want to reach. Sorry, it's messy with my little cursor. So maximum heart rate is the number that I don't want to reach during this time frame. Okay, so after I do my 186, I have to subtract that average resting heart rate. And so that is 66. So that number, that then gives me 120. So now I'm working with this 120 number, and this 120 number is considered my working number. Okay, after I'm doing my working number, I do it and I make 2 columns with it. So I come up here and I make a 120 over here as well. So when I'm using my 120, I now want to determine what my fitness level was and what's most appropriate. So because I said that my fitness level was 34 milliliters per kilogram per minute for my max VO2, that gives me an average fitness level for my age and gender. So based off of that average fitness level, what that gives me means that my target heart rate zone should be between 70 and 80% of my maximum. Okay, so that is average. If my heart rate zone, or if my fitness level, was above average, I would then do a 75 to 85% of my target heart rate zone number. And so that's what I would use, 75 to 85%. If I were below average, I would use a 65 to 75% range. So it's really important that you understand what your current fitness level is. Okay? From that standpoint, I use that range to put into here. So I multiply this 120 times 0.70. This will give me an 84. I then take that 70% and I add the 10 to it to get the 80%, because I'm using this range right here because I was average. I put the 0.80 here, multiply my 120 times 0.80, and I get 96. What's really important to understand is that these two ranges are always 10% difference. If I were below average, I would have used 65 to 75. If I'm average, I use 70 to 80. If I'm above average, I go 75 to 85. Okay, so I get these two numbers. And in order to get what I would consider my high and low range of heart rate, I have to add back in that resting heart rate. So for both of these, I have to add back in 66. And so 84 plus 66 is 150, 96 plus 66 is 162. And so here we go, that's my range. So this is the number of heartbeats I want per minute while I'm exercising. Because when we do fitness activity, we do not check our heart rate for a full minute. Many of you may have an Apple Watch or some other fitness watch that maybe keeps track of your heart rate. But if you don't, you would check your radial or wrist pulse for 15 seconds at all the different times throughout the heart rate zone. That's what you need to do this week. And so when you do that, then what we do is we just divide these two numbers by 4 so that we can get our 15-second heartbeat. So here we have 38 and 41. Always remember to round up if it's above 5 and round down if the decimal is below 5. You can't have a half a heartbeat. Can't feel that. So in 15 seconds, I would want 38 to 41 beats. This is how I figure out my intensity of my workouts. Now I come back to our textbook where we're using the fit chart so that we can get fit. We're talking about the frequency, the intensity, the time, the type. I add the E for the actual enjoyment factor. And so here's a chart that we're going to use. This is very important to remember and something that I asked you to pay attention to in designing this week's workout. So we want to look at the frequency. This right here states that the frequency is 4 times per week. Down here is the American Heart Associations, and they're talking about different types of exercises that you can do. Remember that the goal here is aerobic exercise only. That includes things that are large muscle groups moving in a rhythmic fashion. Many of you had excellent ideas. Walking is a perfect exercise. Some of you said that you would be doing spinning. Some said swimming. So all of those things are excellent exercises. We are not using strengthening exercises at this point in time. Our goal is only aerobic exercise. Everybody needs cardiovascular exercise. Lots of people come to me and say, I don't need to lose weight, but I'm telling you that cardiovascular exercise is for all of us because the number one cause of death in America is cardiorespiratory disease. So we're all going to do some sort of aerobic activity. So not resistance training, only aerobic. So from that standpoint, you're going to say frequency. 1 time a week is not enough. 2 times a week is great for maintenance. Let's say you got above average on your fitness test. You're feeling pretty good about that. It felt nice. You didn't feel sore afterwards. And so you're saying, I'm going to stay here. I like this fitness level. I'm going to maintain it by doing 2 days a week of exercise. If you want any type of improvement, you would do 3 to 5 days a week of exercise. If you really want to burn fat, it would be 4, 5, or 6 days of aerobic exercise. If you're training or conditioning for something specific, some type of maybe competition, 5K, 10K, half marathon, full marathon, 100-mile bike race, what you would do is you would then increase that activity and do it 6 days per week. But you should rest on the 7th day. Remember, you still want to be physically active, but you do not want to do hardcore physical activity when you don't have on the day off, okay? So the intensity is purely determined by your target heart rate zone. You need to be in your target heart rate zone. So if you're doing walking, jogging, cycling, you'd be moving yourself a little bit faster to make sure that you stay in your target heart rate zone if you're too low. If you're above your target heart rate zone, then you want to slow it down. If you feel like you need some more resistance in biking, you can switch up your gears. Even on a stationary bicycle, you can change and alter gears. But for walking and jogging, you would need some sort of weight vest, and that weight would need to be equally distributed. So you want to be careful about doing that initially. Okay, the time. So the truth of the matter is that when you start to look at the time, our goal is 30 minutes. So the very minimum that we would start with would be 15, and then you would try to do 2 bouts of exercise a day. But if you didn't have time and you can't, we start with 15 and our goal is 30, but you can go all the way up to 45 minutes within your target heart rate zone. The type of exercise, one more time, this is what are you going to do? Am I going to walk? Am I going to jog? What am I going to do? That's the type of exercise. The E is the enjoyment factor. I love walking around the neighborhood. It's nice and quick. I take my dog. We get good exercise. Okay? That's where that falls into place. Then from that standpoint, you literally send this to me and I look at your program. This is the program for the exercise. Remember, you must include a warm-up and you must include a cool-down. Once I approve those things, you're good to go. So I'm hoping that this is helpful to you. Please get back in touch with me if you need more guidance. Have a great night.